Hey, welcome back to Guided. I'm your host, Zach Luz. Guided is a podcast all about following our intuition no matter where it guides us. And on today's episode, we have a very special guest, Dr. Maria Laura Nasi, author of the book Cancer as a Wake-Up Call. So I first met Dr. Nasi at the Hay House Writers Workshop, and as soon as I heard the title of her book, I knew I had like that intuitive ping where I'm like, I have to get her on the show. So I reached out, and I was fortunate enough that she had a little bit of time available for a quick interview. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. The reason I'm so excited to have her on is because she's like literally at the forefront of modern medicine. She is integrating East and West into an integrative approach that like takes the best of both worlds, and she can speak about it from a place of deep understanding and real world like lived experience. To give you a little background on her story, she's a doctor who graduated from the University of Buenos Aires, and then she went on to specialize in clinical oncology and internal medicine at the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, which is kind of like as high as it gets as in terms of cancer research. She then went on to become the clinical research director for the International Breast Cancer Study Group in Bern, Switzerland, and then became a research director for a Swiss pharmaceutical company. After her time there, through reasons which we'll go through in the interview, she decided to broaden her approach a little bit, and then she started integrating some of the mind-body stuff. So then what she did was specialize in mind-body medicine at Harvard. She also specialized in psycho-socio-spiritual interventions for cancer patients at the Simonton Center. She's the founder and president of the Association of Integrative Oncology, a nonprofit. And while I could keep talking about her accolades for days, I just want to conclude with the fact that now what she does is she has a private office in Buenos Aires where she treats cancer patients using her blend of clinical oncology knowledge, mind-body medicine, and astrology. She also gives postgraduate classes to several universities, teaching them about psycho-endo-neuroimmunology, which is basically her way of explaining how all healing happens. Her book is phenomenal. You should order it right away, even if you don't even have time to listen to this interview. The reason I'm so excited about this is because she lays out a roadmap for healing that is so easily understandable for anyone, and it also gives you a very practical way of interacting with your health and knowing how you're doing. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the interview, and I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm really excited to have you as one of our guests, and I feel like over the past couple of weeks since I don't even know if I can call it that we met through the Hay House Writers Workshop, but as soon as you jumped on and said that, hey, you were writing another book, and as soon as I heard the title of your first book, instantly I was like, I have to know this woman, I have to meet her. And ever since then, I've just been immersed in, your interviews, your book, your everything. And I feel like you're one of the best kept secrets to like healing just overall. So I'm really happy that you're here and that you're willing to go maybe a little bit outside of the realm of where you normally speak about your message, because I think a lot of my listeners, they're going to be able to connect with your work in a way that we might not be able to understand logically how it's all going to work, but I have a really good feeling about it. So thank you so much, Dr. Nasi, for being here.
Well, thanks, Zach, for that introduction, and I hope this meeting, this chat we're having together, will be for the benefit of us all.
I have little doubt. So let's go ahead and start with a little bit of your story for those who don't know you. Just if you could kind of give us a little background of what was the life journey that led to you deciding, like, okay, I want to write Cancer as a wake-up call.
Wow. Oof. Well, I was born and raised in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where I'm now. I went to medical school here, but I knew from my adolescence that I wanted to dedicate my life to oncology, but I didn't even know oncology. But I thought probably at that time it was like, I know this is a very difficult situation, or very difficult issue in medicine, and I was attracted to the challenge or something. So right from the beginning of my career, I knew I wanted to go to the States to train, to do my fellowship. And that was like my goal for so many years. And I worked hard for it. And I eventually did get into a training program, and ended up doing my 3-year training at Sloan Kettering in New York, which for me, it was, wow, it was like getting to the top of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, life took me to Switzerland. I had the possibility to stay in New York, or I met the one who was my husband then for 10 years, who was a Swiss oncologist, and he took me to Switzerland. So I opened up to whatever life was giving me, offering me over there, and I dedicated 10 years to cancer research in Switzerland. And one of my last jobs there, first I was in an academic group, and then I was in a pharmaceutical company which dedicated to development of new drugs in oncology. And my last job there as director of the research in oncology, I had to go to biotech companies and university research labs to look for new molecules to develop as cancer drugs. And I realized that when I went to meet these people that were doing drug discovery, they were completely focused on that cancer cells, and they knew the immense details of how cancer cells work, but they were completely detached from the person who was suffering that disease, that diagnosis. And from my clinical background, something was troubling me. I'm like, are we waiting to look for or waiting to find a cure for cancer, just looking at the cancer cell and not understanding what's going on with that person who has a diagnosis and who's being treated with cancer? And at that time, the first papers on systems biology started coming up from California, from UCSF. And I was really amazed at the data suggesting that the cancer cells behaves depending on what the immune system, and that crosstalk between the immune system and the cancer cell. So at that point, I started having my doubts whether I really wanted to put all my energy and continuing to look for for a new cancer drug just by looking at the cancer cell. And at the same time, I had a personal crisis of revisiting my values and the way I was living. And all this crisis ended up in letting go of my job, letting go of my personal life in Switzerland, and taking a year off to go and find myself, and to go and understand life from a more holistic view, from a view that included not only my academic training, but also me as a person, body, mind, spirit. And I ended up, first I went to do the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela in the north of Spain. And that was really amazing. And 5 weeks of being by myself, walking, meditating. It was like a continuous, active meditation. And then meeting very fascinating people from all over the world, looking, in search for themselves. So that was a very amazing experience. And then I wanted to go to India. I had gone once to India for work, and I had only been there like 5 days. And I said, no, next time I want to come and live, side by side, like the people live here in India, to know what they think, how they feel, how another human being with other thoughts, other beliefs can have a completely different life than we have in Western life, And so I went for 3 months and traveled all throughout India and visited ashrams and did meditation retreats. And and then I came back to Buenos Aires to visit my family. And there I started wondering, how am I gonna, what I'm gonna get back to? You know, I had all this academic background and all this, you know-how in oncology and oncology research. And on the other hand, I had discovered all this more spiritual world. And I decided to try to integrate both. And then I realized there were a lot of other doctors and practitioners in the same search, you know, looking for a more integrative medicine, integrating body, mind, and spirit. And and that was over 10 years ago that I started a medical practice in integrative oncology, and we founded an association here in Argentina, and we work together with the SIO, the Society of Integrative Oncology, in some guidelines from the States. And so this 10 years, I dedicated myself to the evolution of this integrative oncology, and which is still evolving. And what I learned from patients is that many times the diagnosis can be a very big wake-up call. Can be the diagnosis itself. I explain in the book, it can be like a tsunami, you know, that makes you lose um, all your safety net. And for many people, it's like a new start. It's like a wake-up call to look at how they are living and who they are, and to start a new way of living, a new way of inhabiting this body, you know. And in that sense, I was hoping, and I hope that this cancer epidemic that we're suffering in the Western world could be a wake-up call to make us all stop and listen to ourselves and start living a more conscious life. And then pandemic came. So now I think pandemic is helping at or can help us in that way also. But cancer as a wake-up call came as my way of sharing all these experiences I've been having through the past 10 years with patients for whom cancer was really a wake-up call, and they started a new, more healthy and more happy life. Yeah.
It's funny because when I was reading the book, the whole time I was thinking about it, I mean, it's obvious that your expertise is in oncology, but there were several points during when I was reading the book where I thought to myself, this might as well be called disease as a wake up call, because the dynamics that you outline in the book, and I really appreciate how you've done not only your philosophy is integrating both sides of health, but you actually speak in a way where people that I think a lot of times are, very respectful of Western medicine, but are kind of alienated by Western medicine, because as soon as you start talking about, the difference between a neuropeptide and a neurotransmitter, they just kind of get overwhelmed and they can't comprehend a lot of the things. You simplify everything down into very, very graspable metaphors that explain, the different things that are going on in our bodies. So, oh man, there's so much I want to go into. But, so if we put it back into the timeline of your life, so you start reading those first papers on systems biology, which sounds to me like it corresponds with, our overall model of healing. So, like where you talk about the reductionist view of our body, where it's like the metaphors were like an engine and you can treat each part separately, but you have a pretty different take on that. So when you started studying systems biology, is that how you shifted your paradigm? Like how did your view of healing shift as you started reading those papers?
Actually, to tell you the truth, my world view or my view of health and disease shifted when I had my own experience. Like from my professional life, I really was achieving everything that I wanted to achieve in life. I was, getting there. And then it came the time that I wanted to get pregnant, and I couldn't get pregnant. And I had all the checkups done, and everything was fine, organically fine, but I couldn't get pregnant. And my husband at the time, he had the studies done and he didn't have any problems either. So I was puzzled, like how everything that I can achieve, that I want to achieve externally, with willpower and discipline, I can get to it. And then I said to myself, there must be another way of living, of inhabiting this body, because so many women have that wisdom of getting pregnant, and I cannot access that wisdom. There must be some other way of living. This is what I thought. So then I started yoga, and I started having some talks with a professional psychologist here in Buenos Aires. I was in Switzerland. I was having these talks over the phone. So I started putting together, like listening to my body, understanding that I had been treating my body like a machine, taking my body from here to there. My life in Switzerland was great, but I was traveling all over the world, not respecting, my daily routines, my sleeping times or anything, and really working like a machine, like the typical Western paradigm that we have, that, that we treat ourselves as a machine and we push forward to give more and more and achieve more. And I by starting to listening to my body through yoga, I started realizing that, we're not a machine. I mean, this is not a great discovery, but for me it was. I couldn't keep on. I couldn't keep on treating my body as if it was something external and like in a machine-like way. So I started nurturing my body. I started understanding, like we're more like nature. Like if you want a plant to grow and flower, like you need to take care of the seed, give it time, um, respect its own rhythm, see what it needs. And it was then that I started seeing changes in my own mind, body, spirit, because as I started to treat myself in a more nurturing way, I also started thinking in a more healthy way, and started, leading with my dealing with my emotions in a more healthy way. So I actually feel like I went through my own wake up call with this fertility issue, and I understood that medicine is great, and conventional, Western medicine is great to provide a lot of the treatments that help, but healing has to come from within. So I understood it in my body. That was my wake up call. And then I understood that many of the people that were coming to consult me were going through the same issues, but just with a diagnosis of cancer, because some people, as some people say, until we get to the bottom, we don't stop, and cancer is such a frightening concept, because even though today we know that more than 50% of the cancers are curable, but still the word cancer, it's very powerful in our collective unconscious. It has very strong effects on us. So and people are a lot of people are listening to that, to that call, and making the change then. But for me, my way of listening to the call of my being, my body, but my being, was, let go and understand that I was living a crazy life, working like a lot and traveling a lot and not respecting my rhythms and not taking care of myself. And for me, the solution was to take a year off and do a lot of exploration and dedicate to myself, and really reflect on how I wanted to live my life and where I wanted to put my energy. And as I'm very much of a left brain, right brain person. I need to understand what I'm going through. So I read a lot. So, the papers in systems biology where the explanation of how, another way of looking at health and disease that give me like the rationalization of what I was feeling in my body, if you want. So but it was really the whole internal experience that really tipped me over, and I said, okay, this is it. I'm done with this type of life.
Right. And that was that more holistic version that you use the metaphor of the organic garden. Like we've gone from I really appreciated how you went through and you said, okay, first we think that you know, first we thought that cancer was a foreign enemy, and we happened collectively to be going through war. So we're like, it's this foreign thing. And then you kind of go through each of the different models where it's like, we have like a lot of industry going on. They're like, okay, now we're like, it's a machine. But the way that you're looking at it now is holistically as a garden, where our well-being is kind of like a collective side effect of having all the other like micro systems within the larger system all working in harmony. And I think a lot of people view alternative medicine just as that, as an alternative. I'll get to it when I can. Like, I know I should meditate more and, I shouldn't be so stressed out, but they're like, I really got to get to this meeting. I really have to achieve this thing. So just give me a pill and then I promise I'll be good later.
Yeah.
So can you paint a little bit of the picture of what was like before your own wake up call? What did your life, what was like your day like back then to what is it now, so people can kind of understand what are the differences that their own wake up call might be beckoning them towards?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because a lot of people are afraid of, what do you mean I have to stop being who I am, and that's not at all, but so for me it was, I was living this really, I coming from Argentina, I was living this really like princess like, type of life in Switzerland. I had a beautiful 1900 home with a garden with an orchard and a fish ponds, and it was by this Lake of Geneva. And I had this place in the skiing resort where we would go the weekends to ski. And we had two beautiful cars, and I was traveling all the time here and there, all pampered, traveling, mostly for business. And I was very happy. I was close to a train station, and that in Switzerland everything works perfectly, because then I could fit a lot of things in my day, because as everything worked perfectly, I could time everything. So I take off from home, and I have 10 minutes to the train station, and the train leaves at 7:17, and then I'm at 9 whatever at the airport, and I can take the 9 o'clock plane, and then I can go to Paris and come back in the same day, or and I was traveling one major trip overseas, or to Asia or to America, at least once a month, and several other small trips. The ones in Europe didn't even count, but I didn't even understand the stress that we put our body through every time we go through an airport, every time we change, when we do this overseas trips, and we stress our body, because we even change, sometimes we change, we go from the northern to the southern hemisphere and so on. We change even stations, and the body has to recalibrate, from winter to summer, and temperature control and everything. I mean, it's a whole, and we do it like nothing. We jump on the plane up and down like nothing. And plus, I was taking care of our home. I was taking care of the two daughters of my ex-husband, because he was a widow, and so the children were small. So I was taking care of their schools, and taking them to the dentist, and like orchestra woman, and then traveling to my job back and forth, and doing long hours, and the typical orchestra type of woman, and very much in a system that worked, because everything worked in Switzerland perfectly, and I had a lot of comfort, but zero time for, apart from the skiing trips, zero time for doing, regular exercise, or for eating healthy, or for if I started doing yoga, or I was living at home. I think it was 6:30, so I got to my yoga teacher's home. She was giving me private classes, so I would go up to, I don't know, 8, and then I would be 8:15 at my job. So in order to fit yoga in my schedule, I had to sleep less, so this kind of craziness. And then I started understanding that this was not it. I really needed to change my agenda, and more so when I wanted to get pregnant. I mean, someone told me, did you see the little birds when they want, they want to have their little ones, and they start building the nest, and they stay there, and they take care of the nest. And I said, well, maybe I have to start slowing down and building my nest, so some, baby will want to come to get born in it. So yeah, I understood my life there was crazy. And well, nowadays it's completely different. Nowadays I live in a beautiful 1900 house in Buenos Aires, with a lot of social support. My family is here, and that I cherish a lot, coming from a Latin family. Like, you always have someone to help you out for whatever, even if they don't live, in the same house or in the same neighborhood. But here, friendship also is very important, is very valued. I have a group of friends that any problems you have, and they're all there for you. They're all, it's a social support. It's incredible. I have my own private office. I 2 years ago, I built this integrative center, small center, which is called Casa de Salud, because I felt that for the patients, it would be nice to feel like they're at home when they go to the doctor, like they are in a comfortable place where they can relax and have a nice talk. So all here in my office is decorated with art, and it has nice windows looking out to the green. So just the space. Nowadays, through psychoneuroimmunology, we understand that the spatial, all the atmosphere, the atmosphere where the ambience where we are living affects us. If we are in an atmosphere that we feel threatened, or that we feel stressed, our uh, autonomic nervous system will be responding with stress hormones. But if we go to a place where we feel, I have a very nice assistant, and she's very nice with the patients every time they come, and she serves them a little tea, and takes care of them like in a nice human way. And so people come and relax, and so coming to the doctor is not a threatening thing. It's an experience where they come and enjoy the art and the plants and the talk. And so, and I try to live like that also, the way I dress, the way I decorate my office. We hug, the patients. So well, not this year. This year it has been a little bit different, but so we treat each other like human beings. I have the label of the doctor, and I take that role, but we're humans, so we treat each other with respect and with love. And with love, a lot of times my patients say I love you, and I say that I love you too. It's really a nice feeling. And I have a lot of patients, and I do workshops. So now I feel I am being the doctor and providing the care that I like to provide, in a way that I like to provide. I take 2 hours for the first visit, so I have enough time. I'm not rushing. I don't answer the phones while I'm with someone in my office. So I try to live according to what I believe is good for our health and for our life in general. So it's not that I had to stop being a doctor. I am being a doctor in another way. What changes is the way we live, the way we perform. I still give a lot of talks in conferences, and I travel. much more in Latin America and the States, sometimes in Europe, but because I'm on the other side of the world, but, and I still do, like this year, I did a lot of Zoom talks in different countries. So it's not that I'm not doing that type of activities, but it's in another way. It's from another, it's in another way.
Right. So, what I'm curious about is, let's say somebody listening is going through their own wake up call, whether that's been initiated through illness, through, you know, they have some kind of spiritual experience, they have some kind of career change, they're just kind of being forced into this path and they're trying to make sense of it. They have like a nagging, yeah, they have an understanding that um, they can't keep going about life in the same way that they have been for so long. What were some of the, studies or um, discoveries that you were making in medicine that convinced you to take things a little bit more serious in terms of respecting your well-being, in terms of like not compromising on sleep and not just packing more stuff in with the promise of like, oh, I'll be greater later. I mean, I remember in the book you were talking about, the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system as like that gas pedal, a brake pedal. And the second I finished reading that, I realized, oh my gosh, like look at all this chronic stress that I've been letting myself accumulate. And it's like instantly, I was like, okay, that's enough reading. I need to go for a walk right now. I need to do a little meditation. So I'm really curious, what were some of the things that you discovered to satisfy that like rational side of you that made you go, okay, here I need to start changing the way I'm approaching my own well-being.
Well, from the rational, I mean, the information that made me start changing my own way of being is that nowadays we know that most of the Western disease nowadays, including cancer, but also cardiovascular disease, even Alzheimer's, rheumatic disorders, they all have this same background, this physiopathology, which is chronic inflammation, which means that if we live a life that makes us have this inflammatory terrain inside of us, then we're more vulnerable to get sick, not only of cancer, but also cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, rheumatic disease, etc., all metabolic syndrome. So, and what is the cause of this chronic inflammation? One of the major causes is chronic stress. What happens is that, okay, the stress response is a normal response. We all need to get up in the morning and to get active and to getting our things done. So there is like this gas pedal inside of us that activates us. Yes, that's a stress response, and that's a normal and a very useful response. But we also have a brake pedal. So health is related. I mean, we are healthy when we are able to attain a balance between the gas pedal and the brake pedal. Yes. So every time we activate the gas pedal, we should then activate the brake to become back to a balance. Yes. So that's what keeps us balanced. And balance means health, because it means that the whole system will be working normally. Okay, what psychoneuroimmunology explains to us is that it is a big word, but what it means is that psycho, our emotional and our thoughts and all our mind, depending on what we're thinking, what we're the images that we're having inside of us, that will affect the psychoneuroimmunology. The neuro part. Neuro is part of the nervous system that it's automatic, that is autonomic, that goes by itself, that we don't have to give any order. But in this moment, it's the one that is controlling like our heart frequency or our breathing, how many times we breathe per minute, or it's controlling the digestion of what we ate an hour ago. So all these multiple functions that are going on right now in our bodies are being controlled, are being regulated by this part of the nervous system, which is an autonomic nervous system, which works basically with a gas pedal and a brake. So everything goes like this. If I put a piece of food in my mouth, then the gas pedal will be activated to activate all the salivary glands to produce more saliva, and all the digestive juices to be prepared to digest that food that I'm eating. And when the food goes through, then the brake will be activated so the juices can stop. Otherwise, we will be, saliva will be pouring out of our mouth day and night, and the digestive juices will be producing ulcers in our stomach, for example. So everything that is activated then needs to stop, to relax. So in our the way we're living in the Western world, we are activating all the time, not only these unconscious mechanisms like the digestive system, but we're all the time through our minds, we're giving orders to achieve more, to go more, to put something else in my agenda, to go to that meeting, so we are stressing ourselves, we're demanding more of ourselves. A lot of times these demands come from outside, another meeting, longer hours, one more weekend without spare time. Sometimes the demand comes from the outside, but a lot of times the demand comes from the inside, because we are we treat ourselves as machines, and we push to give more and more, to sleep less and produce more. Yes. So, and we are not in a culture that invites us to press on the brake pedal, to relax. So if I had a hard morning, then it's normal that I press on the brake and take a little nap in the beginning of the afternoon, or just take some time to go and do a 30-minute walk before I go to the next job that I have to do. Yeah. So we don't have that, or we think that that's luxurious or that's frivolous to have that time, to take some time to have a tea, or to go and walk and do a little walk outside like you did when you were reading this, or that or to do some meditation, or to go to a massage once a week. We think that that's frivolous, but wellness is not frivolous. It's necessary to keep us healthy. And in some countries, they have understood this for millennium. So they have incorporated, their medicine includes massage and meditation and yoga and tai chi, and all these disciplines or all these practices, because that's part of keeping us healthy. But here in the Western world, very much affected by all the industrial revolution and all the more of the Western philosophy, to produce and to give more and to treat ourselves as machines, then we are pressing on that gas pedal, action, 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 and then we rest at night if we can, So all our lives goes like that, action, 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 and really we should think about more like action, relax, like alternate, because that's a way to keep us balanced.
I think a lot of people listening to this will be thinking, like, okay, I understand. I know I should be doing this, but they're like, Dr. Nasi, you don't understand. I can't. I can't do that. And I'm really curious how you address that question. I mean, relating it to my own life, I remember I spoke to a friend years ago, and the way I was raised, it was like all our food's organic. Like that's just that's just what it's gonna be. And he was like, "How do you spend so much money on food every month?" And I'm like, the way I view it, I would rather pay a little bit more for an apple that doesn't have 40 pesticides coating it than like I'd rather pay like 25 cents more for that apple now than pay like hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills later. So for people that feel like, okay, I do want to relax more, I do want to create that balance in my nervous system. How do you address that concern that people have that like I can't afford to take a nap?
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a true concern, because the problem is that we are living in an environment that obviously conditions us, or to live against what the whole current is, the way the whole current is living, it's very difficult. It's not easy. But Krishnamurti, who was an Indian spiritual guide and philosopher, and he said, there's nothing sane or healthy in trying to adapt to a completely unhealthy lifestyle or unhealthy culture. So this is what is happening. We say, oh, everybody's stressed out, so we keep on, with the same rhythm, and it is very difficult. And I think it's very personal on how can each one go about the changes. Unfortunately, what I see is that a lot of people don't stop until they're sick. And when they're sick, now they can say, okay, now I can take time off for myself. But it's very sad that they couldn't put that limit before. They couldn't put that stop before. And they, had to wait until they were sick. But a lot of people say, a lot of people tell me, I knew that if I continued like this, I was going to get sick, but they couldn't stop, you know? So then it's very personal. A lot of it has to do with our own beliefs, because for some people, if they've been raised in a home where people are valued for what they're producing, like the leitmotif of that family is, to produce and to bring more money, and to, which might be the, how people were raised, especially if there were people, who were immigrants and coming with nothing to a new country, and then they had to build a whole family. And so for some people, it's more like a way of being loyal to their own families. So it's something that is demanding them from the inside. Even if they go to a job where they allow that they take a walk take a break at midday and go for a walk or something, but sometimes the demand comes from inside, because they come from a family, for example, for a family belief that that's the way to live. For some other people, it's a question of not being able to put what we call healthy limits, and to say no to the outside. That's very common also. Oh, if everybody's working like long hours, why shouldn't I? Even though the contract says that my job is from 9 to 5, let's say. So they're unable to say no, to put healthy limits. So for each one, it might be a different incorporating those changes and start putting the limits, and start prioritizing their health and their time for themselves. But it all depends. Sometimes it has to do with self-esteem, and people that feel that the only thing that they have to offer is their work, and then that's the way they can prove to others that they are there for them. And because they don't know that what we all have best to give is ourselves, not our work, not our, but what our essence, what we are, the uniqueness of each of one of us. So I believe that sometimes it's very hard to make the big change by ourselves. So that it's very useful, or to start participating in activities with other people that are thinking the same, with other people that are trying to make the change, because then you get that support from the group, and then you get that strength from the group. A lot of times it's a question of just putting the intention, and meditating every day to where you want to, visualizing, I want to live a healthier life, I want to live a life that I can respect myself, I can have time for myself, I can have nurturing relationships, and then be open to the changes that start coming, to the invitations for change that start coming. Sometimes the invitation is that your boss says, I hired someone else for your job, and now I want you to be in another sector of this company. And that's okay. And we usually see it as a failure, but it might be the invitation to say, okay, this is not longer for me, that type of job. And this new job will allow me to have more of a equilibrium between my personal life and my professional life. So I think it's very useful to start relating to people who are also in this change of paradigm. And a lot of times we're also working with a counselor, with someone who guides us, or someone who, like a spiritual guide, or someone who can guide us through those changes. Because once we start savoring, like really tasting what it is to live according to our essence, to connect to ourselves, to be able to express our needs, to say no, to put limits to healthy limits to the outside, and we start feeling better, then we know that we start knowing from the inside that that's the way. But in the beginning, it's not easy because the environment is taking us in another direction, another rhythm.
So then I work a lot of time with business owners. Um, so what I find out for them, so this is like a learning that we have over and over and over again. I remember one client I worked with, he was a little bit overwhelmed by his business as he was doing the same kinds of things over and over and over again. And it was at the point where he just needed to start hiring employees. He had like one or two like independent contractors, but he wanted to have somebody that was more of like a full-time basis. And he was having some resistance to it. And he's like, I just don't know how I'm going to be able to let go of the responsibility of this work getting done. So one of the things I said was, I said, okay, I want you to hire someone to come and do cleaning at your house. Because for him, he hated doing his laundry. And he was convinced that somehow it was going to go wrong. But he decided to try it out for a couple weeks. A couple weeks later, I said, hey, how's it going? And he goes, well, she folds my shirts in the wrong way, but it's so nice not having to do this that I just feel so much better. And then he ended up hiring more and more staff and growing his company. But in the book, you use this metaphor of the rope and the snake, where I think our beliefs work a lot, because that kind of triggers all the other stuff. Like I have to work harder. I have to, like a lot of people, they do it for that, that family loyalty where, they either feel guilty if they're having good things in their life, or they feel innocent because they're withholding all the good things from entering their life. But that parable that you share of the rope and the snake, to me, it's like the perfect metaphor for the beliefs that we have. Like that client that I was talking about, he was convinced that something was going to go wrong, that she was going to somehow mess it up. But then he ends up finding that it actually works out okay, and actually is a lot better and healthier for him. Do you notice the same thing going on with your own patients?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, belief work is one of the main the pillars of the workshops I give and everything, because it's the the belief then generates different thoughts, like you said, and then we keep repeating the thoughts, and then we repeat the thoughts who become actions, and then the actions we keep repeating them, and then they become habits, and then those habits become what we are, or the way we behave. And this is not me saying it. Gandhi used this quote, beware of your thoughts, because your thoughts will determine your actions, and your actions, your habits, and your habits, who you are and how you're living. So we have to go to the root cause, to the beliefs, and understanding where those beliefs come from. And a lot of times it's beliefs that we have from very, very small, from when we were like before 4 years old, when we're downloading all this information, like I use this metaphor of, the first 7 years of our life, especially the first 4 years that we are sleeping a lot. It's because our nervous system is in a we're not really sleeping. What we're doing is our brain is vibrating in a wavelength that it allows all this information to get in, or like if we're downloading all these applications in our brain, and it's the first few years of our life.
Yeah.
And then we keep in automatic working from those applications. And I tell the patients, I tell them like this: maybe it's fine, those applications served you up to now, but now your body is saying that this way of living is not helping you, and it's time to update your applications or change for new ones. So it's a question of reviewing your beliefs and seeing whether this is your own belief or it was a belief of your father or your mother or whoever, or the belief of that time. And maybe nowadays it's not appropriate for the time that you're living now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very common, and it goes in all directions, like for very little things, or for other things. Like last week I had this patient I've been following for a long time, and she has metastatic cancer, but now she's in remission, and she's been doing a lot of changes. And through this pandemic, she, even though she's been working on herself and, peeling the onion and seeing more layers of herself, coming out and changing, she just realized that with the pandemic and with the impossibility to go to sell, she inherited a shoe business from her father, and she was out on the streets all the time, going to sell her products. And she was leading a very exhaustive life. And thanks to the pandemic, she started realizing that she can do a lot of that through, through the internet and whatever. And she's living, she said, my sales came down a little bit, but I'm having much more time for myself, for my son. And I think this is my new way of living, and she understood that it was like a
Mm-hmm.
loyalty to her father, who passed away 2 years ago, but she still has that loyalty to him to do whatever he taught her to do. And now she was able to see this, and to see that that's the way her father used to do things, but nowadays with technology we can do things different. And now she can choose, the way she continues with her family business. And this is small example, but for her it was a big insight, because now she is redoing her agenda, and thanks to the pandemic she's redoing her agenda in a different way, which is more healthy and more happy. She says, I have time to do this dancing class I've always wanted, and I didn't have time. So, and sometimes it's so ingrained in us that it takes a lot of time. It's not just saying, I do a 3-month course and I change all my beliefs. Sometimes it goes, you first have to do some more superficial changes, and then you start going deeper and deeper, and then you get to the, to the roots of the issue. So I can't do it, or it's impossible to take a nap, or in the middle of work. They're all beliefs, and they can all be challenged. They can all be challenged. And last time I was hearing a talk by Wayne Dyer,
Mm-hmm.
and he was saying one of the exercises he used was asking the person, can you be like, if someone says, I can't take a nap in the middle of my work, for example. And so he was asking, so can you be 100% sure that you cannot take the nap? Well, 100% sure nobody can be, and said, okay, what's the contrary? The contrary is, I could take a nap in the middle of my work. And say, can you be 100% sure of that? No, I can't be 100% sure that that's truth. So now it's your choice. Which one do you want to believe? You want to believe that you can't, or you want to believe that maybe you could. Well, if that makes you feel better, maybe you start say, looking for the way. And maybe it's not an app, but now you find that there's a chapel and you go to pray, or you go to meditate in the middle of the day, and that equals, like a small rest or a small nap. And you didn't go into bed, you didn't put your pajamas and go into bed and take a nap, but you had your restful pause, the one you needed to, to re-energize yourself for the afternoon. So that's how it works, little by little,
Mm-hmm.
go doing those small changes towards a more healthy life. And we're all happier in the sense that this is organically, the stress hormones put us very focused, very much detached from others, very much in a competitive type of behavior, because that's what stress hormones are for. They're there to make us take action in an emergency situation. So even organically, the hormones make us change our mood and the way we behave. And we know that when we press on that brake, we generate a lot of other hormones that will not only make us feel better inside, but also promote that we go and look for contact with others, to look for help, or look for relationships and to relate to others, to ask for help, to ask for support. And this is even a more evolved way of dealing with stress. So the brake and the gas pedal are like the basis, but we can even go to a more evolved way of dealing with stress, that is looking for help and support and feeling part of a community, not feeling alone. So if we are all the time in the emergency mode, pressing on that gas pedal, chemically, we are not able to ask for help, to accept support or anything. But if we slow down, then other options start coming up.
So then, on that note, seems like social media is a double-edged sword because on the one aspect you have the sense of community that you can gather from it, but on the other side, it's like you have all of this fear being pushed into whatever social media feed that you're looking at. I mean, I guess what's your opinion of social media and its implications on health?
Yeah, I think that it's like technology, and it's now you're asking me this, and I'm thinking about our mind, and our mind is a device, and technology is a device, and it all depends on how we use it. Social media and technology are not bad, but it all depends on how we relate to them and how we use it. And I do the parallelism with our mind, because this is what you learn when you start meditating, to understand that our self is something beyond our mind, and that our mind is a device that we can train, that so that it becomes useful for us, and it's our disposal to go in the direction that our self wants to go. Yeah. So this is the same. I mean, technology, the phone, the smartphone, or whatever, is very useful, but if you are trapped and you let the phone uh, decide when you are paying attention to all the notifications and all this, so then you're lost, because we know that all the the algorithms of social media and everything is to attract your attention all the time. So if we just let that our mind just gets controlled by social media or by technology, then we're lost. But if we train our mind and we put limits to the time we spend on the screens and the time we spend, then I think it can be a very useful devices. And social media, the same. It depends how we use them. If what's intention behind what we post, or what we go and look for. What's intention? If you can see that there's a lot of people relating through social media, and there's very different intentions behind their messages. When we train our mind and focus our mind, we can have a clearer view of who we want to follow in social media, or what we want to post, to put that at our disposal, but not be trapped by social media or by technology. This is my take on it.
Okay, so then let's go in a little different direction from here. So I'm curious, like, what are some of the questions that you are investigating now? Like, what are the questions that you're trying to find answers to that you're most excited about by in your work?
What I'm most interested now is in trying to understand how disease and imbalance relates to the way we're living in relationship to how little we know of ourselves, and understanding how the path to inner knowing can take us to a more healthy life. Because what I see a lot is that people really get sick because they are leading a life that has nothing to do with their essence, with whom they are. And I talk like this because when I see a new patient, I learned how to use the natal chart, the astrology chart, to understand the essence of that person, to understand what that person might value the most, how the mind of that person works, what type of relationships this person might get into, what are the traps that that person might fall into, and what's the teaching or the path that that person came to learn in this life. Those are the type of information that we can learn from reading an astrological chart, not a horoscope, but really a good comprehensive reading of a
Yeah.
astrological chart. And what I see is that a lot of people are living either in a very limited part of themselves, like we have all these characters within us, and sometimes we're just, identifying with one or two of these characters, and we're not living our whole potential. Or another way of explaining it is like this Rumi poem that he talks about the house and the different rooms in the house. And I see people that are living like if they're living in their basement and they are not aware that they have a beautiful first floor, a beautiful garden, a beautiful within themselves. So they're living, in a very limited way. And or sometimes they're living, let's say, only in the kitchen, in the sense of they're doing
Mm.
doing doing doing, and they're not giving themselves part to explore other parts of themselves, like it could be like their more artistic part, or their, so in through the natal chart we can see it's like an imprint of the essence, of the energetic essence of a person, and how starting to live more according to our essence starts leading us to a more healthy life. I mean, I see it in my office. It's not theory. It's when people start taking the time to get to know themselves and build a life that it's more according to who they are, they start enjoying more, and surprisingly they start getting better results, with their
Mm.
treatments, or feeling better, or having less pain, or needing less medications. So I think we're in the Western world, we're living a life very much disconnected of our essence, of who we are. And that is what appeals me the most nowadays, to
Right.
to bring that spiritual dimension, spiritual, energetic, how you want to call it. It's that part of us that we cannot see in a PET scan or in the blood work, but that it's part of us, that it's completely part of us, and that we've been ignoring. And we need to bring that back to us, understand who we are and what we're here for, what is that we came to this life for.
I feel like with most Western doctors, not to generalize because you usually get into problems when you generalize, most Western health practitioners, they're not doing a whole lot of looking at astrology charts to look for clues. Why do you think there's such? It just kind of feels to me like it's like, all right, East versus West, pick a side. Which one are you on? And it's like, I feel like there's so much value that can be gained by having a foot in both. I mean, like, the middle way, like having respect for both. Because even though in this interview we've spoken a lot about the spiritual side, the energetic side, the unseen, the, psycho, neuro, the emotional side of well being, you also like in like emergency situations, you're very pro Western medicine. So why do you think there is like that conflict between the two sides, and what do you see as like a pathway where doctors can where they can extract the good from it without being mired in all the details? Like, do you notice that conflict that I'm talking about amongst other colleagues, or things like that? Do they what are their reactions when you tell them that you're examining medical astrology?
Well, I don't tell them too much because I know that there's a lot of prejudice in us for astrology, but I think it's going to come less and less. It's going to be more accepted. And I think that astrology is one way, the way I learned how to integrate a more holistic view of a more an understanding of how everything works together and works connected, that you cannot separate one thing of the other. Astrological part is an image. It's not linear, it's not a book, it's not something you can read from left to right. It's an image, it's full of meaning, it's full of information. And in order to appreciate, can be any image, a work of art or any image, you need to set your brain in a different way of reading reality. It's not the same way that you set your mind to read a book, that it's linear writing. So for me, astrology was the technology, the discipline that helped me to integrate that view of complexity. But I understand there are other ways also, including, people that practice, for example, Ayurvedic medicine or other medical systems that already have a holistic view. So just to say that I believe bringing astrology into medicine, it helps incredibly in bringing that essence, that spiritual content, and that view of seeing life again as the complexity, as a complex system as it is, and not trying to to separate into pieces, and like we've been doing in the last 200, 300 years. So I think the problem in medicine is that still in medical schools, medicine is being taught in a very linear way, a very reductionistic way, in a way that we see the body as a machine, and like if we could divide it into smaller parts and study each part separately, but then we don't understand how to put it all together and how it works all connected. So and the problem is, we as doctors were being formatted in that way. So we pass 4, 6, 10, 14 years training our mind to think in a reductionist way. So now someone comes and tells that physician, oh, you have to think, or there's another way of seeing how everything is connected. And no, it's too much, because for 14 years they've been trained in another way. But I think it's a east and west. I mean, what we're talking about is this dualistic vision, that we think there's two ways, and there's east and west, and there's right brain and left brain. And like, instead of seeing a brain that is the whole, we tend to see one pole or the other. This is our dualistic view of life. And I think that we are at a time that this dualistic view is being very much challenged. It has been challenged by many sages throughout the ages, when they talk to us about going into that spiritual realm of meditating, to be able to experience union and step out from duality. But our mind still thinks in a dual form. We're still formatted that way. I think it will take generations to integrate left and right in in an easier way. For us, it's still a challenge to be able to integrate two poles.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I mean, because I mean, in Western medicine, we're talking about fixing a disease, and in Eastern medicine, the basis is how to keep a healthy being. So one is talking about health, the other one is talking about attacking disease. It's not either or. We should be looking at both. If we have a trauma and we break our leg, we want Western medicine to fix that leg up. But then we want the Eastern view to see what might have happened, that that person got into that accident, and how is that person living, and what he or she might be needing to reflect on and change directions in order not to repeat another accident or another disease in their life. So they're not either or. They're not exclusive one of the other. That's why I don't like using alternative medicine. It's not the alternative. It's either one or the other. It's the integration of both.
So that seems like kind of what all of your work is focused on, is integrating and creating that conversation in the world that can see the benefits of both sides, where we can use one side. I mean, I almost look at, because I mean, astrology for me personally, I was extremely dismissive of all of that stuff in younger life because I grew up and was raised in a spiritual environment. And I was like, okay, cool. Let me try the astrology, the manifestation, let me try all that stuff. And I think, and no Ferrari in my driveway. I'm like, this doesn't work. So then I threw it all away. And I think what started getting me more open to the other side of everything was when I started hitting my head on the ceiling and I kind of went through my own spiritual awakening. And then at that point, like hopefully it doesn't take like a huge traumatic shift of your life to open you to these other things, but I see that there's no conflict where like why can't a doctor look at a natal chart and then the natal chart says, okay, the based on their stuff it says their throat might have some issues, so let's do the MRI, let's do it on their throat, like let's pay attention to those areas and then incorporate all the different tools that you talk about in your books, like the PNIE network. Let's see what are the emotional things that are going on for them. I mean, I've seen this countless times with friends of mine, even where I had one friend who was in this business partnership and he was just killing him, but he felt like he couldn't say anything, and then he developed Hashimoto's, and it's like it was the clearest thing where it's like you're suppressing everything, like you feel like you can't talk to anyone except me about this thing, and it was clearly just eating him alive, and then the physical manifestation showed that. So I think it's important that we have that integrative approach that you are pushing forward into the world. That's why at the beginning of this I said you're one of the most important, best kept secrets, because you can speak both languages. And I think, I don't know if I want to take it in this realm, but like the dualistic system, it's not working. Like if we look at politics, like that's another dualistic system, and we've done one side or the other side over and over and over again, hasn't worked. So the answer I think is through an integrative approach and doing the things that you're discovering. So what's the best way for people to stay in touch or explore your new work? Like we mentioned a couple times about your new book, Medical Astrology. How does someone stay in touch with you and your work and stay involved?
Well, I'm starting to be a little bit more active in my social media in English. I've been, very much dedicated to social media in Spanish, and I have my Instagram and everything, and YouTube, and so now I'm activating my Instagram in English, which is Dr. Laura Nasi, Dr. as in doctor, Laura as in Laura Nasi, Nasi. And that's what I'm committed now to activate. I really don't spend a lot of time, on the social media, because it's for me it's very tiresome, and I don't. I put a lot of energy also, well, in writing, in seeing patients, in doing workshops. So I'm trying to be. I'm trying to put interesting information and probably sharing there if I do some workshop or something. So I think that's the best place to look for me, in Instagram as Dr. Laura Nasi. I also have a website about my first book, which is Cancer as a Wake Up Call book, and you can read a little bit about myself and my book and what's been said about it in there. And well, and then I have a lot in Spanish, and hopefully I will have a YouTube channel in English, but I don't want to commit until I see that I will have time enough time to feed it and to feed with quality information.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's my where people can find me.
Okay. And then, are there any last things that you wanted to talk about to wrap things up? Are there any last thoughts that you want to leave the audience with?
I want to share that I think that the change is possible. This change in paradigm in medicine, you were talking about how difficult, why can't a doctor also see a chart, a natal chart, and include that information? I believe that the whole system is set up so that our Western medicine works, and it works very very nicely and very efficiently in a lot of places. But if we want to incorporate, more the PNI and the psychoneuroimmunology and the spiritual path, we will need to rethink the way we practice medicine. To probably give a little bit more time, in the doctor-patient encounter, or in the multidisciplinary meetings, including also a psychologist, or in this case, an astrologer. So I think the way that medicine works nowadays, with this very short, very focused, directed consultations, it will be hard to include a lot more information. And as you know, any of these changes will usually takes time and effort from a lot of people. So my message is that if we, this change, we are able to do it, but we need to work, all of us who believe and who want a different health system. We can all give something, we can all help in some way. And it's either me from pushing from the inside and trying to do this bridge and explaining, one side to the other side in a respectful and careful way. But also, a lot is being done. I see it here in Argentina, for example, through patients that have this experience of looking further, and then they, I had patients go and take my book to their oncologist and say, I want you to have this, I want you to read this, you are telling me that I'm doing very well, but I want you I want to let you know that I'm doing a lot of other things apart from the chemo, and this is what is really helping me to get through the treatments better, and to be better and to feel better. And so now a lot of the oncologists starts, now they start calling me and asking me, wow, what are you doing? And when they see that I'm not against what they're doing, but that I'm reinforcing all the healthier behaviors for the patients, and the patients are feeling more contained, and that they're doing better and feeling better, then the doctors, as they see there is no threat, they also start opening up. So and there's a lot of, like patients themselves or consultants, they can do that. They can, try to talk about these things to their own doctors, or to other health professionals. Or for example, someone that is that knows how to cook very well and learns, the benefits of this, they can start a small business on cooking healthy and consciously and respecting environment. And how a lot of people are doing. What I mean is that the change, I think we're doing it, all of us, where we cannot expect that the change comes from above, from the leaders or the directors. People can lead and show us the way, but then we need a critical mass in order for this. People start saying, no, I don't want this 15-minute consultation where the doctor barely looks at my eyes or asks me how I am or knows who I am. I want some other, and start going to physicians or to healthcare professionals that practice medicine in a different way. So just to, or to start asking for change at their hospitals, or whatever. And things are changing. And I'm one of the many that were trying, to push this forward. Um, I'm very committed to it because I believe it. I really believe it. I went through it through my fertility issue, and I know the difference, from just medicine and medicine, holistic medicine. So my take home message would be, what can you do to help this new paradigm move forward? What do you have to share, to help out, to yeah.
Beautiful. So, whether that means reading your most skeptical family member's astrology chart and telling them something that surprises them on one side of the spectrum, to being at the leading edge of medicine that is integrating East and West so that both sides get enhanced from the tremendous expertise in both. I think there's something that we all can be doing. So thank you so much for being here. Thanks so much for your time and for everything that you've done to get to the point where we can have a conversation like this. So thank you again.
Wow, thanks, Zach. This was a very, very pleasant talk, and I honor you and respect you for the work that you are doing. I think tapping into our intuition is key for regaining our health and regaining our north to live our lives most fully and to share all our potential, to fully explore and share who we are. That is the best gift that we can give to anyone. So thank you for your work also.
Thank you.